I was born in Los Angeles, California, actually downtown LA, and the date of my birth was July 17th, 1923. My father's name was Ramon Lopez, and he was a descendant from the original settlers of New Mexico, as was my mother. We had moved around the Los Angeles area several times, and we happened to be living in one of the old Victorian mansions up in Bunker Hill. I graduated from high school at Polytechnic High School in downtown. I finished my high school education, and then they were drafting all the young guys back into the service. So I decided I better join up. If you're a volunteer, you can choose your branch of service. If you want to go into artillery, or if you want to go to infantry, that you choose if you're a volunteer. But if you're drafted, they put you wherever they want. Since I was a little kid, I wanted to be a pilot. But I thought that my chance to become a pilot is very, very slim. So I opted for aerial gunner. Now, at that time in 1942, tail gunners, I think, had a life expectancy of maybe 2 or 3 missions. And they were just getting killed right and left. Anyway, I didn't think too much about it at that time. I know about it now. But at that time, I was only 18 to 19 years old and didn't think much about being shot up. A notice came out in the bulletin board that those people who wanted to be pilots could take the test. So I took the test, and luckily I passed it. After graduating from advanced flying and getting my wings, instead of going into combat, they made me an instructor. But by the time I finished my tour of teaching, I had over 1,000 hours in the air. So I had a lot of experience. After 6 months of teaching cadets how to fly the basic flying, got a notice from the commander that I was going to go into combat. When we were in England, we would escort bombers on a bombing mission. But the drawback of the P-47 was it burned too much fuel, so they'd have to turn back. The Germans knew this, and so they wouldn't attack the bombers until the fighters left. What the higher-ups decided that we would designate the P-47 as a ground support. In ground support, we were doing a lot of missions where we were shooting up tanks and half tracks and infantry, German infantry. The 8th Air Force, because of the fact that they were escorting bombers, they got in a lot of dogfights, and the aces, a pilot who shot down 5 German airplanes. We were aces in our own way. We were aces because we were shooting up Tiger tanks. A Tiger tank is worth more than a German airplane. So we were aces in that respect. In Paderborn, Germany, there was a big center for the German training. So we were attacking that area there at that time. And as I was coming down, half-track was giving me all the firepower that I was giving them. A piece of shrapnel from an exploding shell or a bullet, I don't know which one it was, went through the canopy and grazed my skull and went out the other side of the canopy. If I'd have been forward just a little bit, it would have hit me in the temple, and I wouldn't be here today. I could hardly see. So I wiped the blood off my eyes. I noticed the half-track that was shooting up at me. So I did a 360, went down and got him, and I obliterated him from existence. I did him a favor and helped him die for his country. I went around and did a couple of more attacks on Tiger tanks and got them out of commission. And then I kept my attack up until I ran out of ammunition. There was no point in going down and getting shot up again. So I made it back to base all right because I kept my attack up even though I was wounded. I got the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Purple Heart for my wounds. That wasn't the hairiest mission that I had. One particular day, I was called up by the squadron commander, and he says, He says, you have been volunteered to go to the front. So I was volunteered to go to the front. And I was put in a tank with a radio that I could contact the P-47s. Whenever they encountered stiff resistance by the Germans, we call in the P-47s to soften them up. And one shell hit the tank that I was in and started a blaze. And I jumped out of that tank, got my radio and jumped into another tank and called in P-47s. I called in several times. Any P-47s in the area, any P-47s in the area. But finally, after several attempts, I got an answer for a P-47 squadron that happened to be in the area. For the first time, I saw the devastation we caused by the P-47s. I saw it from the ground. I saw what the ground troops were so happy to see. It was October 21st, 1944. There were no combat missions, so they sent the whole group out on a fighter sweep. The ground radar came out real excited. There was a big group right in front of us, so we headed that way, and sure enough, we encountered over 20 FW-190s, and we got in the biggest dogfight of the war. We knocked down over 20 FW-190s, and then on the way back, we encountered another 20 or so fighters, and we got into a big dogfight there also, and we knocked down over 20 more German airplanes. We lost 2 Thunderbolts. There was a transport airplane in the squadron, and none of the other pilots were interested in flying it. But I'd love to fly, so I made myself the designated pilot of that transport. Now, I was flying all over Europe between combat missions. The war ended, but I kept on flying this transport, flying some people down to Frankfurt, Germany from Fritzlar. I got the weather report before taking off, and it said, oh, we had scattered clouds, nice scattered clouds, no problem. I said, oh, great. So I've taken off, I'm going back to Frankfurt, and I see these scattered clouds all coming together. Pretty soon I had an overcast, and this overcast kept getting lower and lower, and I kept staying under the overcast. Finally, the overcast hit the ground, and I said, oh, well, I had to go back into it. See, I saw this big tree coming right next by me. I said, holy moly, I'm below the tree line. And right after watching that tree line, I said, I reached up to give myself some flap. So I just started to turn the flap handle, bam, I hit the ground. Went over, and nobody was hurt. The only thing that was hurt was both my ankles were turned in, were busted, but I didn't know that. I got out of the airplane and went down the hill, and I remembered my jacket. Oh, I got to get my jacket. So I went back, walking on my ankles. I didn't even know I was walking on my ankles. It didn't hurt at all. Managed to get back down the hill, and I collapsed about that time. The next thing I knew, I woke up in a Paris hospital. My ankles and everything were all in cast. My head had gone forward and hit the bracket that held a compass. My whole cheek had been busted up. I went into flying for John Hall. John Hall is an old movie star. He was flying Navions. By strange coincidence, one of the Navions that I was flying there is now owned by my son. What a coincidence, small world. After flying for John Hall, I got a notice from the War Department saying, what rank would I accept to come back to service? And I was so stupid. I could have said captain, major, lieutenant colonel. I could have said anything and they'd be glad to get me in. I said second lieutenant. Oh, I think about it now. I get nausea just thinking why I chose second lieutenant. I just wanted to fly, that's all. So we were the only F-86 squadron stationed in the United States there at George Air Force Base at Victorville, California. It was August 1953. I was stationed in Victorville, and I had a girlfriend living right near the Coliseum. So what I did, I took the Sabre up and climbed up to 50,000 feet. 50,000 feet is almost 10 miles. I could see the Coliseum way down there. So I did a split S with full power. A split S is this. You turn the airplane upside down, drag it through the horizon, and go right straight down toward the ground. Well, I dove that airplane for 30,000 feet straight down. And I see my Mach meters reading 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. And when I got to 1, I knew that I would pass the speed of sound. I was at 20,000 feet and started to pull out. It took me 10,000 feet to get into level flight, going across the San Fernando Valley at supersonic speed, going back to the air base. I made a path of broken windows all across the San Fernando Valley. Boom, 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 with my sonic blast. So I blasted LA with a sonic boom going straight down. And my sonic boom was about 10 times stronger than what you hear. I went to the officers club, called up my girl and said, anything happen in LA? Yeah, big explosion. LA City wanted to know who in the hell was in the air. The Air Force said, oh, we didn't have anybody in the air. Of course, if they'd investigated, they'd have known it was me. But they never investigated. That was my last hurrah in the Air Force. Soon after that, I was relieved of active duty, and I went back to civilian life. I wanted to keep on flying as a civilian, so I decided that maybe I'd join the Air National Guard. Air National Guard was stationed in Van Nuys. So I went over to Van Nuys there. You're supposed to be interviewed by the squadron commander there. So I got interviewed by a colonel, squadron commander, and he didn't even give me a chance to say anything. He looked at me and he says, you are unqualified. I said, I'm unqualified. 100 combat missions, the DFC, Purple Heart, 10 air medals, Croix de Guerre from Belgium, and Fort de Guerre from France, and all that experience, and I'm now qualified. So I got up and walked out. He saw a Latino, and it was an Anglo flying club. I just got up and walked out. I joined the Air Reserve at Long Beach. And I was flying out of the Air Reserve there at Long Beach. I started taking pictures all over Korea. I had my own dark room there in Korea, developing pictures. So when I got out of the Korean War, I was looking around for a photo studio, and I saw this photo studio for sale downtown LA. So I bought the studio, and this beautiful girl comes in to have her picture taken. When she comes to see the proofs, and I tried to get her to go out with me. She wouldn't go out with me. Her name was Maria de Los Angeles, Mary of the Angels. We had 5 children. I had 2 girls and 3 boys. One of the boys, Gabriel, taught him to fly when he was a teenager. He does the flying for the family. We don't drive any place, we fly. We always fly and look down at the freeway and look at it jammed up, and we just ha ha ha, we just laugh. I still fly the airplane once I get into the cockpit, but I don't take off or land anymore. I do leave that up to Gabe. But after I'm in the air, I still fly pretty good.